June 1944. Somewhere in the French countryside, a Nazi reconnaissance plane flies over Allied positions. The pilot radios back urgently. An entire American tank division, hundreds of tanks, artillery pieces, trucks. They're preparing for a major assault. But there's one problem. None of it was real. The tanks? Inflatable rubber. The trucks? Painted canvas stretched over wooden frames. The soldiers? Actors, artists, sound engineers. This is the story of the most unusual military unit in World War II. 1,000 men who didn't fire a single bullet, yet saved thousands of lives and changed the course of the war. The Ghost Army, the soldiers who fought with illusions. This is dark history you've never heard before. Most war stories celebrate heroes who charged into battle. Soldiers who fought with rifles, grenades, courage. But what if I told you that some of the most important soldiers in World War II won battles without ever firing a shot? They were called the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, but history would remember them as the Ghost Army. For over 50 years, their existence was classified, erased. A military secret so sensitive that even the men who served couldn't tell their families what they did. These weren't Navy SEALs. They weren't commandos. They were painters, fashion designers, set designers, advertising illustrators, men who understood deception better than combat. And between 1944 in 1945, they pulled off over 20 battlefield illusions so convincing they fooled the German army again and again. This is their story. By 1943, the Allies were planning the largest military invasion in history, D-Day. But there was a terrifying problem. Hitler's Atlantic Wall. Over 2,400 miles of fortifications, bunkers, landmines, machine gun nests. Waiting, the Germans knew an invasion was coming. They just didn't know where, if the Allies attacked in the wrong place or if the Germans reinforced the beaches in time. D-Day could become a massacre. So Allied Command asked a strange question. What if we could make the Germans think we were in two places at once? What if we could make one battalion look like 10,000 men? The man who answered that question was named Colonel Ralph Ingersoll, a former journalist and magazine editor. He'd seen something during the British campaigns in North Africa. The British had used dummy tanks, crude plywood fakes to confuse Axis forces. It worked, sort of. Ingersoll had a wild idea. What if America built an entire fake army? Not just fake tanks, fake bases, fake radio chatter, fake sounds, fake everything. So in early 1944, the U.S. Army did something unprecedented. They went to art schools, they went to ad agencies, they went to Broadway. Montage of young men, painters, sculptors, designers, signing enlistment papers. They recruited over 1,100 men, not because they could shoot straight, but because they knew how to lie convincingly. Among them, Bill Blass, who would later become one of America's most famous fashion designers. Ellsworth Kelly, a future legendary abstract painter. Set designers from 20th Century Fox. Sound engineers from radio studios. They were taught how to impersonate officers, how to spread false rumors in bars, how to forge military insignia. They were trained in tactical deception. And in June 1944, just 2 weeks after D-Day, they landed in France. Their first mission was codenamed Operation Elephant. The goal? Make the Germans think the American 2nd Armored Division thousands of real soldiers was in one location, while the actual division quietly moved 50 miles south to attack. So at night, the Ghost Army rolled in. They inflated rubber tanks, dozens of them. Each one weighed just 60 pounds and could be set up by 4 men in 15 minutes. From the air, they looked completely real, but that wasn't enough. The Ghost Army's secret weapon wasn't visual. It was sound. A team of engineers had recorded real military sounds. Tanks rolling, diesel engines idling, soldiers shouting orders, trucks moving convoy formations. They played these recordings through massive speakers, some weighing 500 pounds that could project sound up to 15 miles away. German scouts would sit in the woods at night and hear an entire armored division preparing for battle. But the most dangerous deception? The people. Every military unit had a unique radio signature. Call signs, code words, transmission patterns. The Ghost Army studied these patterns obsessively. Then they impersonated them. They broadcast fake orders, fake supply requests, fake casualty reports, all designed to make German intelligence think real divisions were operating in those locations. And it worked. Captured Nazi documents later revealed that the Germans believed Allied forces were twice as large as they actually were in certain sectors. The Ghost Army had made 1,100 men look like 30,000, but their greatest illusion came in March 1945. Operation Wehrsen. The Allies needed to cross the Rhine River into Germany. It was the last natural barrier before Berlin, but the Germans were dug in, waiting. The plan was to cross at Remagen, but if the Germans knew that, they'd reinforce it with everything they had. So the Ghost Army was sent 10 miles north to the town of Wehrsen. Their mission? Make the Germans think the 9th U.S. Army, over 40,000 soldiers, was about to attack there. For 3 days, they built the illusion. Dummy airfields, fake fuel depots, inflatable artillery batteries. They'd played recordings of bridge-building equipment 24 hours a day. They even had soldiers walk into local bars drunk and brag loudly about the big offensive coming at Wehrsen. And the Germans bought it. They'd pulled reinforcements north, weakened Remagen. And when the real 9th Army crossed at Remagen, they faced half the resistance they expected. Thousands of lives were saved because of a lie. But this wasn't a game. The Ghost Army wasn't behind the lines. They were on the front lines. Setting up inflatable tanks meant being in range of German artillery. Broadcasting fake radio signals meant the enemy could triangulate your position, and walking into occupied towns to spread rumors, that meant risking capture, torture, execution as a spy. The Ghost Army lost men. Not many, but enough. Private Harold Dahl was killed by a German shell while setting up sonic equipment. Sergeant Edward Boscha died during a reconnaissance mission. They died protecting an illusion. And for 50 years, no one knew. When the war ended in May 1945, the Ghost Army was quietly disbanded. They were told to go home and to never speak of what they did. Their missions were classified top secret. For over 50 years, these men couldn't tell their wives, their children, their friends.
My son asked me what I did in the war. I said I moved equipment. That's all I could say. For 50 years.
It wasn't until 1996, 51 years later, that the U.S. government finally declassified the Ghost Army's records. By then, many of the men had already died, never receiving recognition, never telling their story. Today, only a handful of Ghost Army veterans are still alive, but their story has finally been told. In 2022, Congress awarded the Ghost Army the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest civilian honors in America. Their deceptions are now studied at military academies around the world, because what the Ghost Army understood before anyone else is that in war, perception can be as powerful as firepower. And after the war, these men returned to their art. They painted, they designed, they built. They proved that creativity isn't just for beauty. Sometimes it's for survival. History loves to remember the soldiers who stormed the beaches, the pilots who flew into flak, the generals who made the big decisions. But sometimes the greatest victories aren't won with bullets. They're won with brushes, with speakers, with imagination. The Ghost Army fought a war without firing a shot, and in doing so, they saved thousands of lives. They were soldiers who understood that in war, the most powerful weapon isn't always a gun. Sometimes it's a lie told so well that even your enemy believes it. The men of the Ghost Army didn't ask for glory. They just wanted to go home. And for 50 years, their story stayed buried. But now we remember.